Turo in 2026, is it worth it? Coming from someone who's been working with Turo since 2024 as a co-founder of Roy's Rental, I can tell you that a lot of things have changed since 2024, and the landscape in 2026 looks no different. Over on my TikTok, I get quite a lot of questions on whether people should start Turo, especially from younger people in the UK who are looking to have their own side business, side hustle. This video is here to address some of the tips and tricks that I believe that you would need to go into Turo in 2026, whether I think it's worth it for you, and also just how I see the future of Turo growing by the end of 2026. I make this advice as someone who's not really a professional when it comes to Turo, but luckily have been able to make revenue of up to 120k last year just from Turo. So I know there's money to be made there, but there's definitely a lot to consider when thinking about going into Turo. I've broken up the first part of the video into 7 attributes that I think a potential Turo host needs to think about before getting into the business. The first of those being time and availability. With the accounts that we run, we always make sure that we're available 24 hours throughout the day. Luckily, me and my cousin split the load between dealing with the customers, dealing with certain cars. So we have made a system which allows us to have trips start anytime, end anytime, mainly by using stuff like lockboxes. I think it's become a 50-50 split in terms of when customers do take their cars, where some of them do come at good times in terms of like 9 a.m, 10 a.m, times where you'd normally be awake or you'd be at the house or you'd be able to deal with those kind of trips. But then again, there's some customers who literally want to take the car at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, and they want to return it at similar times. So you have to be ready for all of those kind of situations, as if you are not, you're less likely to be getting as many trips as you possibly can. And the key with Turo at the moment is utilization. You want your car to be out as much as possible. So are you willing to put in the time to wake up at 4 a.m, 5 a.m, well, not even really wake up, just be ready to deal with customers at those kind of times. If they message, if they have an issue at that time, if they randomly call, which they might do at certain inconveniences, you kind of just have to be on the ball and be ready. But with enough planning and scheduling and those kind of things, you can minimize those things. So that's one of the, I guess, good things about Turo. If you have a good system in place, you can then have enough time for yourself and not really need to deal too much with customers and to deal with the whole process, which is one of the benefits. So it's kind of 50-50 in terms of you just have to be open to be available at those times, but you could actually plan around to make it so those times won't have any issues, so you could kind of go about your day as you'd like. Number 2, which I think a lot of people might fail at, is the fact that this is quite a long-term investment. A lot of people think about car rentals, and when it comes to Turo at least, it's not as lucrative as if you would be renting out a Urus or anything along those lines. Maybe you have one, maybe you're going to rent them on Turo, I don't know, but it's not going to be as lucrative as it would be if you're doing private rental, just because there's a lot of costs that come with Turo. They take a lot of money. You need to have that in mind, that some of the amount of money that they take at the moment is ridiculous, and hopefully something that will change in the future, but something we'll speak about during the end. So when it comes to looking at this business in a whole, you have to have a maybe 2-3 year plan per car. If that, you really ideally you want to be running it for 5 years. Within the first year or 2, you try to pay it off. Hopefully if you buy a car around maybe the 8k to 12k mark, with low insurance, you'd be able to do that within maybe 1.5 years, and then the rest, if nothing had gone wrong, would be profit and building off the profit. But to get cars that are that cheap, you'd have to go high mileage, and that means that it's more likely to break, and then the maintenance will push you back even further. So it's just something that you have to have in mind, that you're not going to most likely be able to, like, you know, pay off the car as soon as possible. But that's business in itself. You know, a lot of investment that comes into business is something that you need to take on the chin for quite a few years and then build off that. It's just whether you have the patience for that. If you want just a quick buck out of it, I don't think this is the right area for you to go into. But if it's something where you want to invest your money so that it's just not wasted in your bank and you have that spare time to put into cars and you like cars, then I think this is something that might be good for you. Number 3 is mechanical knowledge. So I am one part of 2 when it comes to this business. Me and my cousin, who's quite a bit older than me, who has experience in cars, has driven a lot of cars, he actually likes cars. I myself, I've never liked cars. You know, being an Asian boy in the rental business is quite ironic, as I'm not someone who likes cars at all. But after being part of this business as more of the technical side of things, I've got to kind of enjoy that side of things a bit more, and you know, it's not like I'll say no to driving a Range Rover. So here we are. But the reason I say this is that with the car, you're going to have a lot of issues that are going to pop up that you could probably, as someone who knows about cars, be able to solve quicker and be able to actually get out of a situation quicker than rather someone who has no mechanical experience. Example being a car that we had recently which looked like the timing belt was going to go soon. Obviously these cars were buying around like 70-80k miles, and a lot of them around that time they start to have issues when it comes to the engine. But those fixes itself is probably half the value of us buying the car. So as you can imagine, it's not something that we want to go through. So being able to plan that, see that ahead, and be able to react accordingly so that we're not actually taking on that loss and then having to wait a few more months just to be able to pay off that damage fix is something that will be really helpful. Secondly, if you're going into like mechanics, when damage happens or maintenance or whatever it may be, those discounts and those, you know, friends favors and knowing someone really helps when it comes to being able to get the most money out of claims or get the most money out of any situation that you're really in, that if you were to go directly to the manufacturer, you're just going to be charged an arm and a leg. So those kind of things do add up in the end game, where those claims and those damage fixes and those maintenance really do take a toll. So having that kind of mechanical experience or understanding of cars does go a long way. Number 4 might be a bit of a weird one, but I think it's the admin side of things. When it comes to cars, there's so many different things that you need to take into account, whether it comes to insurance, permits, the income coming in for that specific car, the damages or expenses coming for that specific car. And I think if you're not on top of those things, it could really quickly overwhelm you. So having a system in place, or spreadsheets or Excels or anything along those lines, just so that not everything is running on your brain, is kind of what I was brought in into the company for, to make Excel sheets to actually make sure everything is being run in a sense that if someone else was to come in, then they'll be able to understand what's going on and their systems in place. I think that's really important, and I've made spreadsheets myself. If you're interested in seeing those spreadsheets, what I've done in terms of maybe congestion counts, permit accounts, when it comes to expenses, income, I've made it in a way which is, you know, it's ideal for my company. I feel as though it might not be perfect for yours, but there's a lot of things you could probably take from it that makes it easier overall to see what's going on. So for example, with our expenses, I would categorize them depending on what the expenses were, i.e. cleaning, i.e. insurance, i.e. lease payments, and then you would have that kind of a bar chart on the side to be able to show, okay, this is really what's taking the most money. And at the moment, it's definitely insurance and the lease payments. So at least we'll be able to see that. But if I didn't have those systems and Excels and spreadsheets in place, you wouldn't really understand what's going on in your business and what you need to change, what you need to cut costs on, and how to then improve and actually gain money from the business in the first place. 5, I think is really important, is having a financial buffer. You might think that, okay, you have maybe 3k, let me buy a car, put it on Turo and see how it goes. I think the main issue with this is that the car business, you know, you're dealing with cars at the end of the day. These things have a mind of its own sometimes, and they could break at any moment. You could be charged for having, you know, wrong tires. You could get into a claim with Turo and then they pay you out less than you actually imagined. One example that I could give is that we had one of our cars break down in France, and that was just after they lifted their roadside recovery service and they weren't offering it in the EU anymore. So imagine us, you know, not being prepared for that situation, having to get a car that's, you know, out of action all the way in France and having to bring it over to the UK. As you can imagine, that was probably, I don't remember how much it was, but probably around £600 to bring it over. So as you can imagine, that is a hefty chunk of money, and from the earnings that you're making from Turo, that could be a month, 2 months worth sometimes. So those kind of things do creep up out of nowhere. So I think having that financial buffer whenever it comes to these kind of investment journeys is really important. If you would be able to do that by buying a car and then still having the means that if anything goes wrong, you'd be able to handle it, I think that's really important to take into account. Number 6, you can't be attached to the cars. First example I'd give of this is our 2 series. I've made some videos over on TikTok. I think my first video maybe would have been us changing the black 2 series to have black rims, and within a week those rims were scratched up. So as you can imagine, you're not going to have a perfect car the whole time. People are going to scratch it up. People are, even when they're getting washed, they're going to scratch up the paint. They're going to have little dents and bumps, and the interior is something that is difficult for you to constantly be able to check after the check-in and check-out. Then all of a sudden you look up and you see, oh wait, where did that stain come from? Where did this come from? So it's very, very difficult, especially if your fleet is much bigger, to be able to handle all of these damages and dents, and not only is it difficult for you to find them, it's also difficult that if the dents and the damage is too small, it's not worth you going through the effort of contacting Turo or contacting the customer and making them pay. Some customers do pay, and some customers are sorry for the fact that they might damage a vehicle if it's to a point where they're like, okay, I've actually damaged it. But then some will just be like, no, it was there before, or it's not that deep, or they'll just blank you and you won't hear from them again. And there's not much you can really do with it unless you go to Turo, and then Turo deals with it themselves. But the issue with that is then your excess comes into play. But yeah, back to the point at hand, is that these cars get damaged quite a bit. One of my favorite cars was a BMW 3 Series, which I'll put a picture up now. Also, one of my first few TikToks where the customer was at a roundabout, and I think he was speeding on a roundabout. He slid out and he went straight into a pole. So obviously that was written off completely with my favorite car that I actually really enjoy driving. And that was when I realized, okay, I need to maybe not get too attached to these cars anymore and just drive whatever. One thing that is good is that my personal car itself is a Toyota Yaris 2016. It keeps me humble. It makes me realize that, okay, a car is just a car at the end of the day. If you have that mindset, I think it'll be better for you going forward on Turo, that if something does happen, it's not the end of the world. I think personally that will be helpful for you going forward. But maybe if you do love cars and you want to get into Turo, it might be the way for you. But don't be surprised if you get annoyed at the fact that people don't respect your cars as much as you would respect them, or understand the value of them. Now, with the people that ask me on TikTok about starting a Turo business or starting this side hustle, a lot of them are younger than me, probably early 20s or late teens, and I could tell that they have quite a lot of love for cars, and they think that obviously a side business will be good, and it'll be good with something that they have passion in. I just think that that scenario itself is something that there's a few things you need to consider on top of the things that I mentioned before. I think one of the main things that you need to consider is the insurance. So even for people like me and my cousin who's much older than me, the insurance that we get for some of these cars are ridiculous. This car that I'm sitting in right now, the Range Rover Evoque, we pay around 1.5k insurance for this. It's yeah, like, when I think about that compared to the other cars, I get really annoyed. We pay less for our Audi Q8 than for this Range Rover Evoque. The Audi Q8 is a 2021, I believe, and this Range Rover Evoque is 2016. Like, the whole Land Rover Evoque situation, that's a whole different story. Maybe I'll speak about that soon, but I would avoid that. But the main thing is the insurance can push you back quite a lot. So if you were to buy a car like this one, we bought I think for 8.5k, but then every year you're paying 1.5k insurance or around that amount. So you need to figure these kind of things into your expenses and your overall thinking in terms of long term of when you're going to be making money back from the car itself. And as a younger person, I think that would obviously take a bigger effect on you. The fact that you're younger, you have less years on your license, less no claims bonus, these things do add up, and the insurance will add up. So that is one thing that you need to think about. The second thing that I kind of mentioned before is the thing to do with time, but more so to do with that if your car is something that's personal to you and you want to maybe make money to be able to pay off your insurance that you're already paying anyway, or you want to be able to pay off fuel, so you just have the car that it becomes kind of free to you, that is great, and that might be a good reason to use Turo. But one thing that I would consider is the fact that the most money made from Turo is definitely on the weekends. So if you're willing to give up your car on those weekends and willing to plan the fact that, okay, I definitely need the car on 7th of April, so I need to block it out 2 months beforehand in case anyone books it. Because if someone then books the car and you cancel, Turo hate that, and they would mark you down quite a lot for that, and it becomes much harder for you to get high in the rankings and be able to be seen, and then more people are likely to be able to book on your account and book your car. So these kind of things need to take into account that if you want to use your car whenever you want, it's not that simple when it comes to Turo. Maybe you could do it in a sense where I think you could schedule unavailability time. So if every Friday you're going to be needing that car, you could schedule that off. But yeah, it's just something to consider, that you might not be able to have full control of your car if you also want to make the best money that you can. But of course, you could also just leave it open on weekdays. People do take on weekdays, much less so, and also the price will be much lower on the weekdays. So if that's something you're okay with, no problem, let it go out while you're at work or anything along those lines. And then on the weekend you'll be able to enjoy it. But it's just something that you should consider. Now, in a different scenario, if we're talking about someone who wants to start a real big business and make a lot of money from this, I think there's a lot of things to consider, like I mentioned before. But my 2 pence on the whole situation would be that it is quite difficult to make a lot of money from this business as it stands in the UK market. At least the amount of money that we make per trip isn't as great as I believe it should be. The amount of money Turo is taking at the moment was promised that it would be getting better, but I think it's getting much worse, in the fact that they're not really being able to handle the changes in insurance for themselves. That with a lot of claims they have to pay a lot of money, and for the insurance that they have on every trip they're paying more money, so that's not really offsetting with the hosts. And right now it's not looking the best situation in terms of how much money we're making from the system. However, saying that, Zipcar has left the UK, so that is one of the biggest competitors I think Turo had, and the fact that they've left means that the possibility of more people coming into Turo and using our services instead is much higher. I've already had many guests that I've spoken to already who said we normally use Zipcar around the area, especially because we're located in central London. A lot of people use Zipcars, and the first alternative that they came to was Turo. So hopefully that means that a lot more people will be coming to Turo, and obviously that would have a lot of effect on the amount of revenue we can make, as you do have a lot of lulls within the year where you're not getting as many bookings. So if you could up the utilization time, I think the money there can be made and it can become much more profitable than it is already. So to conclude, for my first video, I think Turo has a lot of ups and downs at the moment in 2026. I think one of the disappointing things about 2026 is that you feel as though Turo itself is kind of going away from supporting their hosts, and a lot of the changes that they're making is kind of to cover their own backs, and not as much love is being shown to the hosts that have got them to this point. However, I do think, a lot of these changes do make sense in the fact that prices are just going up, insurance is going up for them as well as going up for us. So hopefully it's something along the lines where we get over this hill, the amount of revenue coming into Turo increases with the closing of Zipcar, and more of that can be funneled into the hosts themselves. I think there's a lot of things to consider if you want to get into Turo. Give a think about everything that I've said. I probably missed a few things. Maybe I can make a supplementary video to this. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comments below. But I hope that helped, and see you in the next video.